From our studios in Princeton, New Jersey, here's what we're sharing today on Writers to Writers. We'll offer tips on how to research the past and bring it to life on the page. And we have a doctor in the house, here with strategies on overcoming writer's block. Also in the show, a segment on book covers, where we'll share what to look for in order to have a great design. It's all coming up right now. Hello and welcome to Writers to Writers. I'm Keith Fritz.
And I'm Jennifer Sneed. Each week we have a Writers to Writers connection segment where we hear your responses to questions we asked about the written word.
And this week we asked, where do you like to go when you write? And here's what a few of you had to say.
My favorite place to write is in the family room, in the house, on my laptop, in the middle of the night.
My favorite place to write is the Mercer County Library. The Lawrenceville branch has a lot of little nooks and crannies and comfy chairs.
My favorite place to write, you know what? I'm spoiled. I have a home office and I'm surrounded by my books. And as Stephen King says, close the door and go at it. I do that pretty much every day.
I'm going to have to try some of those places.
Yeah, me too, definitely.
Keith, tell me, what is one of the favorite places you like to write?
I have two answers for you. If it's the daytime, I like going to a library or maybe a cafe, but I have to have earplugs because I can't listen to people. If it's nighttime though, I just got to sit on my couch where it's comfortable and nobody's going to bother me.
Well, I agree with you on the couch for my second option, but my first is always a desk. I like the structure of a desk, and I like a desk. I have
Something
a favorite
solid
desk.
about that.
Yeah.
Okay, I can understand that. I can appreciate it. Now, what we would like to do is we'd like to hear what your answer is. So write to us, maybe from that favorite place, in fact, and share where you like to go when you write. Here's how you can do it. Is there a story in you that you're dying to write, but you're intimidated because the setting is in another time period? Or maybe you love researching about historical places and people, and you're toying with the idea of writing a fictional account.
Here to offer a few tips should you decide to make the written journey into the past is Robin Levinson, author of a dozen books, including the historical fiction children's series Galley Girls. Thank you so much for joining us. Why don't we just start with, how is historical fiction defined?
Well, I would define it as anything that takes place in the past. It could be a few years ago, or it could be a more historical setting, really at any time, from the Stone Age, Middle Age, any time.
Okay. So I know that a historical fiction author needs to do an awful lot of research. Is there some places we might go to, find resources? And I'm thinking especially something that's a little bit more out of the ordinary that our viewers might not think of.
Aside from the internet,
yes,
obviously, there's some historical libraries. I love libraries. You can go and get some primary source material there. There's a Revolutionary War library right up in Pennsylvania over the river, not far from here at all. And so that's a great place. And also great resources are librarians, and they love to help you. And you could go to professors, and you can go to historians. And there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of material.
There's some great ideas.
Yeah.
What are some common mistakes made when one is writing historical fiction?
Well, I think maybe people don't do enough thorough research, and then they start writing, and they keep getting stuck because they're not working with an outline, and they're making assumptions about things, and then they realize that they don't have enough depth to really, carry forth the story and drive the narrative. So my recommendation would be to do as much research as you can until you feel like your plate is full and it's time to eat.
Oh, that's
but
nice.
Knowing that eventually you're going to run out of some ice cream, or you're going to realize, oh, I forgot the ice cream. So you're going to have to do a little bit more research. So, keep yourself open to that. And also, if you want to be loyal to some details from the past, it doesn't, obviously, if it's fiction, but if you want to keep it realistic, it's really good to have somebody else who's an expert and authority in that time period read your manuscript and give you feedback, and then respond to that feedback. And
that makes a lot of sense.
I did that for all three of those Galley Girl books. I found experts in, very strange places, and I looked really hard for them, and it was very nice to them, and they helped me.
When you're doing your research and it comes time to doing some writing, what happens when you have a gap in between the reality versus your fiction? There must be a very fine line that you need to worry about crossing over there.
It really depends. I mean, some people say that if you change one fact, then the whole thing's fictionalized. So really, you can just have the historical backdrop as kind of out there bubbling around, or it can really drive your narrative in a much more robust way. So it's really up to you and your own creativity and how much energy you want to put into, getting into those details. Personally,
a lot of choice involved.
I think it gives it more authenticity if you can find, if you can get some really authentic details into your book.
Any specific tips to be careful to not cross that line when writing historical fiction so you don't make a really big factual mistake?
Well, if you're going to write about a real historical character who, say, a political leader, and the narrative is being driven by a particular decision that person made, and you want it to be real and authentic, and maybe the rest of the story is how it's affecting other people, I would definitely try to get my facts straight, and I would, like if it was a president or something like that, or somebody who's really well known. But if someone more obscure, you can get away with a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah, of
A
course.
little
That makes
leeway.
sense.
Yeah, you have a lot of leeway, and
well
plus
known.
it's being marketed as fiction, so have
does
fun,
have fiction in the
fun
title
with
there.
it.
Yeah.
Have fun with it, and I wouldn't feel locked in too tightly by those parameters.
Okay.
Why are people drawn to it?
Well, I'm drawn to it. I can't speak for everybody, but I'm drawn to it because it has like that sense of realness. Yeah. And maybe I can learn something, but I'm not reading it to learn something. I'm reading it to be entertained, but it feels...
It's a little bit of both, maybe.
It has gravitas in a sense because... Yeah. And you feel like if you have a really... if you have a kind of imagination that really likes to kind of time travel into the past, and it speaks to you.
Those are some great answers. Thank you so very much, Robin,
Thanks
for coming in
joining
and
us.
helping us
It was a
out.
pleasure. Thank you for
Appreciate
having
the
me.
tips. One thing all writers dread is writer's block or writer's anxiety. Unfortunately, it seems to be unavoidable and strikes most writers at some point along their creative journey.
Here to help us today to understand and battle this common condition is psychotherapist Belinda Seiger, who specializes in helping others overcome writer's anxiety and writer's block. Belinda, thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
So we need to know right from the very beginning, what exactly is writer's block? How do you define it?
Writer's block is the inability to produce writing for an extended period of time.
And how do you define writer's block from writer's anxiety? How do you differentiate?
Sure. So writer's anxiety is one type or cause of writer's block. And writer's block can be caused by many different things.
Okay, I see. So what are some other things that might cause writer's block? I understand anxiety might be one of the reasons, but what are some of those other reasons?
Inability to come up with an idea,
Okay.
a feeling of lack of confidence or insecurity, or pressure from oneself or outside.
So it
Sounds
seems
pretty complex.
writer's block can be pretty inconsistent. What are some of the, why? Why do you get it?
Well, very successful writers can have it, newcomers, and people who are just getting started in the business. So anybody can have it. And again, the reasons can be personal, or they can be external.
Okay, so I'd understand that in order to help overcome it, you really need to identify the reason why the person is feeling anxious. Are there some examples that our viewers might come to understand so they could recognize that?
Sure. So for writer's block, one of the typical things that happens is after success, a person has difficulty coming up with a new great idea. So they might feel that their ideas are not as good as the first idea.
So they have a lot of pressure to repeat what they did
exactly,
great the first
do it
time.
again really well. So one of the things that I suggest is that a person take a break from writing and trying to figure out an idea and kind of do something totally different and novel. Go on a vacation, take a bike trip, visit a museum, just change of scenery, change things up, get some new things going on in your life. And ideas can be generated as a result of that, rather than focusing on trying to have a new idea that's going to be outstanding.
Sounds like you just want to say, let it come naturally.
So, to some degree.
Okay.
To some degree, yeah.
Now, would some consider these a little bit of a procrastination? Go take a break, go on vacation. Many would see that as procrastination.
So procrastination usually entails avoidance, intentional taking a break or changing things up is something that you would suggest someone do on purpose rather than avoid, which is usually done as a result of anxiety.
Now, how would you recommend someone do this? Would you recommend that they schedule time for it? You know, when they are feeling that they can't write, should they schedule a day, schedule a week? Is it just random, whenever they feel?
So again, it really depends on what the cause of the writer's block is. If it's anxiety, I do suggest we take a look directly at what's causing the anxiety.
Okay.
If it's not being able to come up with an idea, there are certain recommended strategies for that. If they're under a deadline and they just feel like I can't produce that much work, then there are different strategies. So it really depends on the cause of the block or the anxiety.
So it's very individual, problem to solve.
That's right.
Wow, I'm assuming there are a lot of different reasons
Exactly.
for this anxiety and therefore the block. Could you maybe give us just one or two other examples, other than the, take a break from it? What about that author that is under a deadline and really can't, take that break? How would you help them?
Well, I suggest that they don't try to solve this problem in isolation. Get together with other writers. Get together with someone who's a mentor. Find a therapist or writing strategist, or find a writer's group. Don't try to figure it out alone, because it's just kind of like spinning wheels and frustrating. So don't try to figure it out alone. Get some support.
Get help.
Get
sounds
help,
great.
get
Take a
support.
break.
It can be peers, it can be professionals, whatever works for you. Even if you're a shy person, get some other folks involved.
Get fresh ideas, fresh mind.
Yeah.
Well, that's some great advice. Thank you so much for
Sure,
coming in
my
today
pleasure.
Helpful.
and helping out, hopefully, some people that are
Yeah.
struggling right now.
My
Get
pleasure.
past that block.
If you're writing a book, you need a cover. Simple, right? Well, maybe not so simple. A bad cover can prevent potential readers from even picking up or clicking on your book in the first place.
So joining us to help us make sure we get it right and cover our bases is Melissa Jacoby, a former art director at Penguin Group USA and author of Life After Genius. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with, is it possible for a writer to design their own cover?
A lot of first-time authors do have maybe a friend or a relative who's an artist, and they think, oh, that's great, I'll give them a job, I'll let them do the cover. But I would suggest you go with somebody who designs book covers for a living. You'll just end up with a more professional product.
Okay, so where does that author go about finding those designers?
Well, actually, you just go to the bookstore or you go online, and on the back covers of paperback books and on the inside flap of hardcovers, designers usually put their names right there. And there's a website, bookcoverarchive.com, that just lists all the book designers, and you can go and click on a name and look at their portfolio right there. That'll get you started.
So it sounds like you just want to look at what already exists and use the people who already know what they're doing.
Exactly.
Great
Exactly.
What are some common mistakes that you find that people make when they're working on their cover design?
The most common one with first authors who talk to me is they always want to do a collage on the cover, which I understand, because you've got 300 pages of a story that you've written and you kind of want to tell the whole story on the cover. That is not the way to go. Simple is better. So a single image, just a figure in a landscape, or it depends on what your novel is. If it's mystery or thriller, you want to follow whatever that look is. But you want to keep the image simple. You've got about 2 seconds to get somebody's attention when they're in the bookstore or online.
Wow.
So make it simple. titles are the same thing. You don't want a long title. A shorter title is good, particularly because thumbnails go down to this big, and you still want them to read the title and see the image.
See, I hadn't even thought about that.
Keep
That's
those
a
things
great
in
point.
line. Yes.
Yeah. So what about, and this is going to be a tough one maybe, because it kind of
Okay.
goes against what you were just talking about. What about those authors who really can't afford the designer that, you know, they really should have?
Right.
Do you have any
Right.
advice for
Right.
somebody that maybe can't get what they need?
Well, you know, you might actually be better with the template than using, you know, your best friend to do a cover,
Okay.
because at least they do know what covers look like, and there's a certain, you know, format to it. But with templates, which start as cheap as $20 and go up from there. If you're going to hire a book cover designer, you're going to start at about $1,500 and then go up from there. So it's definitely a price point thing.
Yeah.
But what you should remember, if you're doing a template and it's for $20 and there's an image on there, they're using what's called a royalty-free image, which means it's cheap, but anybody can use it. So you may have picked it for your cover, and there might be 10 other books out there that
have already done the
have that
same
image
thing.
on it.
Ooh.
So you can always do an image search, and hopefully you'll find out how many covers out there already have it
Okay.
on there.
Is there a different process between nonfiction versus fiction when selecting the cover?
Well, I would say yes. On fiction, it's a story, it's a more emotional connection you want to make with the reader, so you do want to have, image is probably going to be the main thing, and then the title and the author's name is secondary, unless you're Stephen King. And nonfiction is going to be the opposite. I mean, it's usually subject-oriented, so you're probably going for that book anyway. So
sure.
you can still use an image, but I think the main seller on nonfiction is the title. So you want again, a big title, catchy, and then use your subtitle to more explain what the subject is of the book.
Okay. Now, what about ownership of that image? Is it the author, is it the designer? Who's creating the contract? How do you figure all that out? That sounds
Right,
really complex.
Right. Well, there's kind of a spectrum, what I think of as a spectrum. And at each end, well, one end you have the templates.
Okay.
And again, there's going to probably be a royalty-free image on there. Royalty-free means you own it. The other end of the spectrum is the high end of the spectrum. And that's when you're commissioning somebody for like $3,000 and they're creating an original cover just for you. You're going to be the only one who has it. So you also have ownership of that. But the downfall is on the template end is it may not be unique. If you put in the extra money, basically the more money you spend on the cover, the more unique you're going to have it. There is a middle range where if you can hire a designer, and there are middle range designers priced as well, and you can get something that's called a rights managed image, and if you get an exclusive on that, then nobody else can use it. And that you have to license. You don't own it outright. You can license it 3 to 5 years. But it's kind of a middle of the road, you know.
That's perfect, because I'm
Right,
sure there are people
right.
who are in the middle and
Exactly,
they need that answer.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Those are some great tips.
yeah, thank you so much. I've
You're welcome.
maybe learned a thing or two myself today. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
great.
Seek some professionalism if you
Yes.
can. Get the
Exactly,
get the book
exactly.
picked up.
Give your writing the boost it needs by joining one of these genre-specific writing groups in your area. The Garden State Speculative Writers, also known as the GSSW Writers Group, invites writers of horror, suspense, mystery, science fiction, and other genres to join them at one of their meetings or critique groups. They meet monthly at the Old Bridge Public Library in Old Bridge. If romance is your writing genre of choice, consider joining the New Jersey Romance Writers. They offer monthly meetings that include hands-on workshops, as well as the opportunity to hear from award-winning authors and from industry professionals. They meet at the Woodbridge Hilton in Island. And if you're interested in writing your own story, meet with others at the Memoir Writing Group in Lawrenceville. They meet weekly on Tuesdays at 2:30 at the Mercer County Library. It's an ongoing program open to new members. You can contact the library for additional details. For more information on these and other writers groups, or to have your writers group listed, go to our website at Writers2Writers.com.
Thanks so much for being here today.
We'll see you next time on Writers to Writers.